Hola, ¿cómo están? Espero que estén bien. Hoy estamos en el episodio 3 de nuestro podcast La Comunidad, Aquí y Allá.
Esta vez vamos a viajar más de 4,000 kilómetros para encontrarnos con Chris Adam. Él es un etólogo que se ha vinculado mucho con la naturaleza, es muy cercano a ella y ha encontrado también que esta relación que puedes tener con la naturaleza es otra forma de hacer comunidad. Vamos a verlo.
Vamos.
Hola Chris, ¿cómo estás? Nos da mucho gusto que hayas aceptado nuestra invitación para esta entrevista y pues quisiera que nos contaras un poquito de quién eres, qué te gusta, a qué te dedicas. ¿Quién es Chris Adam?
Gracias para esta invitación. I am first and foremost a naturalist, and I define a naturalist as someone who loves nature. When I found that definition, that's what I wanted to be, and that's who I am, both as a child and as an adult now. And everything after that built on this love of nature. Presently, I'm the director of the Sustainability and Living Campus Office of Dawson College in Montreal, the largest college in the province of Quebec. I'm also the executive director of the Earth Values Institute. It's a federal charity that specializes in using nature as mentor. So regardless of what you're going to teach, how do you use nature to teach that topic? So we look at nature as a library for medicine, for architects, engineers, poets, the inspirations like we see in Van Gogh or Beethoven, and what happens consequently when we lose that as a society, when those experiences in nature become endangered. How does that affect us? I also have a private consulting company, a small one. So I also consult for business. I'm on various boards. So my work has taken me to an interesting place at the moment. But the most interesting part of all of this is reconnecting people, which builds community, which I'm sure we'll be talking about. But how do we reconnect with nature and create that goal at the same time to build group cohesion and bring people together? So I think I've got one of the best jobs in the world right now.
Sí suena al mejor, sí suena al mejor. Quisiéramos que...
Yo ahora
¿Sí?
que te escucho, pienso en una pregunta que no está en el guión, pero que me gustaría que nos dijeras cómo te acercas a la naturaleza, como cuál es tu primer encuentro y el momento en el que dices, de aquí soy, a esto quiero dedicarme, esto es lo que me interesa.
Good question. The first words that come to mind, there's a peace in the silence of being outside. I think solitude is really important, where we get to see ourselves in a neutral site, where we can be the best of anything. And I don't mean the best in an egotistical way, but you can just be who you are, and being still, not interrupting, not being invasive, just being brings nature to you. So for me personally, when I can be still enough to the point where my back hurts for such a long time that a bird can give me eye contact, which is really special, or any animal is eating, or it's behaving in a natural way, which means to me that it's at peace as well. I haven't interfered with its day, is really special to me. So that's something I think about. So my piece is trying to give a voice to the silent plants and animals out there that desperately need our help right now.
Nos dejaste impactadas. Sí, claro, yo te escucho y pienso en cómo, lo que ya decías hace ratito, cómo nos hemos alejado de la naturaleza, ¿no? Como si no fuéramos parte de ella. Y me parece muy interesante y te agradezco mucho el trabajo que has hecho acercándote a otros a la naturaleza de la que somos parte.
Sí.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what you've just said is really important. And that's where school has to spend some time. We can't just live in nature. And I think it's a fundamental mistake we make. We have to learn how to live with it. And I know in English, in, with, you say, it's not a big difference, but it's huge. So when I look at the house next to me with a swimming pool, which is a private lake, and a glass fence, and the birds are hitting that fence every day and dying every day, and the lights are on at night, and the night, the beautiful night. I want to conserve darkness. It's endangered. And there's animals that need darkness, but the lights are on. And then there's the grass that's this high and cut, one species of grass for the whole lawn, and nature's pushed to the side. And I just talked to him. He's a wonderful man, works hard. And he says, Chris, I love nature here. But he has to look beyond the borders of his property, as many of us do. That's not living with nature. That's an arrogance that we bring as a species that has to change. And that's part of my work as well, that to me, our landscape, the way we treat our lawns define us. So we can teach a lot in school about what we should do, but the values that we show and how we treat our property is really fundamental to what we're really all about.
Entiendo que tú haces este trabajo en la universidad. ¿Cómo fue que tú te formaste para hacer este trabajo? ¿Cuál es tu formación?
I'm going to answer that two ways. There's school and there's education. And school is part of education. So I'm going to start with my education. I dropped out of school at a young age. I was like many boys, unfortunately, I couldn't sit still in class. I was stubborn in that if a teacher at college could not tell me why I was taking a course, I would walk out. That was maybe a bit silly and immature because I took entrepreneurship, I took photography, I took 3 years of wildlife and fish management. I think I'm 5 courses short of the degree, but that never interested me. I wanted to go to school to educate myself. And I always wanted to be a teacher, but I didn't have a degree at the time. So I did then what I continue to do now. It was a problem I just looked at it as a challenge. So I don't have a piece of paper, but I wanted to teach, and people told me I was a good teacher, but we're unionized here. So I started a company. It took 48 hours and I called myself an educational specialist. I specialized in using nature to teach, and I got contracts. So I taught for 20 years through my business at all levels, from university to pre-K. I developed programs for gifted children, children with multiple disabilities, private schools, inner city schools, the poorest areas. I got so much experience. I was forced to learn on my own. Then I went back to school in my early 40s to get a master's in education. And I'm not against any school. I think, it shows you discipline. Of course, you learn a tremendous amount about who you are. It shows that you can start and finish something I couldn't do when I was 19. But I wouldn't change it any other way, because I think I matured as a student going into school, and I was able to learn and understand why I was going to school. I didn't have that when I was 17, 18, and 19. So I needed that degree for the job I have now. But to answer your question about what is my formation, it is my youth. It is all those times I spent with the sore back looking at ants and looking at birds and frogs and understanding them and reading and reading. I didn't have the internet, so much reading. And then developing programs. I remember the first contract I got for developing programs for children with multiple disabilities. I didn't even know what that meant, but I was so proud when the school board would say, you can do this. We need your energy in there. Or a school would say, we need a man teaching how to care for the environment. I thought, wow, that's amazing. I felt so good. So now I have the capability to express myself better pedagogically. I can evaluate what I do better because I learned those skills in school. But I'm very proud that I educated myself. Society educated me, and it took several teachers that told me, never put down what you can learn by yourself. School puts you in a direction, and then your education starts. And I really believe that. And I tell all my students, challenge me as your teacher. Ask me why you have to learn this beyond just getting a degree. Why is the world going to be better because you're taking this course? If I can't answer that question, they don't have to do my homework. And sometimes it's hard, but that was my philosophy as a teacher for 25 years, that there was a connection to making the world a better place to everything that I taught. So I taught leadership, group dynamics, entrepreneurship at the college level, special needs, how to treat special needs, quite a range. Program design, I taught as well. So quite a range of topics based on my experience. And I was first hired at Dawson because of my experience. So I don't know what the word, here it's affidavit. You go to a lawyer and you sign, you swear on a piece of paper that this was your background. So I got affidavit pieces of paper from 5 or 6 major clients, private industry, universities, where I taught courses before I was a teacher, and said, if you want to hire me, here's proof that I know what I'm doing. So they hired me before I had my degree. Then I got my degree afterwards. So there's different ways of doing things.
Sí. Chris, yo te escucho y pienso en el trabajo que haces, ¿no? Cómo esto que decíamos antes, te acercas y acercas a otros a la naturaleza y entiendes que desde tu trabajo como maestro, pues puedes contribuir a que el mundo sea un mejor lugar. Y entonces quisiera preguntarte cómo vinculas esto que haces con la comunidad, con hacer comunidad.
Yeah. I mean, there are different definitions of community, right? Depending on the discipline you're using.
Mm-hmm.
True. However, what I want to do is that holistic view, my goal still today is how do we take disciplines that completely dominate university? Because they're easy, you know, that we can focus as teachers and students, we can evaluate well. The government knows what we're doing. I understand that. But I also think it's a fossilized system. It's an old system. So how do we treat the whole person? How do we treat a community when all through your schooling and my schooling, it's disciplines? We take the pie and we cut it up into pieces. We give everybody a mark, and then we kick you back into society and say, put it back together. I have big problems with that. So to me, it's all about relationships. So what's your relationship to your food? What's your relationship to each other? What is the relationship of an educational institution in society? What are the ecological relationships? So one of the things that I always felt, I knew intuitively, but I'm now learning to express and to research, is psychology and ecology have to come together. We've separated them for too long. So knowing and feeling is so important in the classroom. We all know that, but we don't have time. Are you going to start feeling in a science class? The teacher's going to say, whoa, it has to be objective. We don't have time in our labs. So who has the time to let people feel? Where's the art in science? And where's the science in art? I mean, to me, we have to repurpose education. And maybe another interview will talk about where I think COVID is a magnifying glass on the educational system. It has magnified isolation. It has magnified stress. But it's a mistake for us to think that this is because of COVID. The stress and the isolation was there before, right? We have 11,000 students at Dawson. There's a lot of lonely students there. There's a lot of lonely staff there. Why? That shouldn't happen. So I've got a lot of work to do still. But I think as we develop a relationship with nature, we begin to share positive emotions. It's a catalyst for positive emotions and positive relationships, the things you know very well. It gives us a purpose. Why do we go to school? To make a better and healthier society, to flourish as a people and a community. So we have to focus on relationships, not isolated content, where some teachers do that well, but there's no system that says this is what it means for a college or a university to flourish. And we've identified that now. We call it a living campus. It's where you live as you learn, not just learn.
Sí, Chris, poner atención en las relaciones en un mundo que un poco las niega, ¿no? Justo más bien contribuye o fomenta, premia incluso el individualismo, el como salir adelante tú por tus propios medios independientemente del resto. ¿Cómo haces, cómo te mantienes en esta idea de poner atención en las relaciones cuando pareciera que todo está en tu contra? Como de dónde sacas fuerza.
Personalmente,
Sí.
it's hard. I'm not going to lie. There are days that I don't show people where I come here, I'll open a beer and say, wow, you know, why don't I just watch a football game like everyone, put my feet up and say, oh, it's 5 o'clock. I'm finished. I can't do that. And I think if you're in education, true education, then you can't do that, or go work somewhere else. I think if I go back to my youth, that solitude I had, the difficulties I had, not comparing myself to others a lot so that what I did was okay, I think gave me what I call risk capital. I don't know what that would be in psychological terms, but I knew at 12 and 13 and 14, I was just showing Louisa, my wife, a letter that I found in my basement last week. It was a letter to the National Museum of Canada when I was 13 or 14. I had these turtle eggs that were beside the road and I was worried they were going to get killed. So I took them and I put them in an aquarium and I thought, what am I going to do? I'll write to the expert in Canada on turtles. Now, think of how many people would say, oh, don't bother. They're never going to answer you. Well, I did. And he answered. It was huge. And he said, it's pretty rare that you can hatch turtle eggs inside a house. Let me know if they hatch. So then I thought again, problem becomes a challenge. What do I have to do to make these turtles hatch? Started to read, didn't have much information, but then the thinking I still do today as an adult. So I'm talking now 45 years ago, 40 years ago, I thought, well, if it rains outside and I pay attention and I put water on the soil and the eggs when it rains outside, that should be okay. And when it's sunny outside, I put the light on over my aquarium. And if it doesn't rain for a week, I'll let it dry out because they were outside. And that was my theory. Well, 3 months later, 30 turtles hatched one night. And I wrote to the same guy. It was incredible. And they came over to my house. Those experiences, now that's an exceptional one, but I had many like that. My mother would always say, you could bring animals in the house as long as you took care of them. Now think of that lesson. As long as you took care of them. Then I thought, what does that mean? That means if they're not afraid and they're at peace, they'll eat. Their breathing should go down, just like me. So if I kept a frog or a toad or a salamander and I was quiet and I thought, okay, it needs a plant, it needs a rock to hide under it. Maybe it doesn't want to see me. And I learned from them. They taught me about patience and empathy. And when they ate and they started looking around and coming out, I knew I did something right. So that gave me this risk capital, the confidence to think, I can do this. So when I fail now, I just think my bank account's pretty full. I have resilience. So I can fall off the bike and I'll, dust myself off and get back on the bike. And I think that's really important. It's something that I've talked to many people about. So when you're creative, when you're thinking out of the box to solve the problems we have to solve, they're not all going to work. So emotionally, you have to be ready for failure. But I don't look at it as failure. I just look at it as what we call wayfinding. You have a vision. This is where I want to go. Okay, this didn't work. Then can you go around? Can you go under? Maybe it's time, maybe it's money, maybe it's energy, but I don't give up. So the vision is clear and it drives me and motivates me. It's just another day to look for another path. And that's contagious. And when I'm down, somebody else picks me up, they lift my spirit, and then I know I can lift someone else's spirit next week.
Genial. Nos estás contando un montón de cosas que me emocionan, pero no me emocionan explosivamente, sino que me hacen sentir el corazón como feliz, lindo. Y te agradezco. Quisiera saber que si desde esos momentos que nos cuentas de tu niñez hasta hoy, en el que disfrutas lo que haces y nos cuentas cómo lo disfrutas, estos periodos han sido fáciles. ¿Es fácil para ti? ¿Qué tan fácil es?
Yes and no. Oh boy, that's a good question too. I'm going to say it's hard because of for me, the mental work that's needed, what I call a game of chess. I forgot the exact statistics, but if you're a chess player, You know, you can move the pawns, you can move the knights, the horses, right? There's not many moves when you start.
Ujú.
But after 3 or 4 moves, you're into the 10,000 possibilities. And I look at a project that way. And I always tell students, and I have to practice it, if you don't make the first move, you're never going to get to the rest. If you're not going to lose some pieces, don't play. So I really do look at complex projects as this game of chess. And as I mature as a person, as I learn how to sequence things better, as I learn how to plan better, I know which moves to make. And a lot of them have nothing to do with the content that I need, the knowledge I need about the environment. It's about people, right? I don't like the word soft skills in English in psychology, right? We say the soft skills. They're everything. You mean the most important skills, getting along with other people, listening, right? Intuition. When I first started teaching as a man, I wouldn't use the word intuition. People would go, what are you talking about? And now I'm proud to say, what does your gut tell you? Where's your heart, as you just said? What makes your heart beat a little bit faster? Let's talk about that. And they go, everybody leans forward and they get excited. So I'm still developing that confidence. So it's both hard, but so rewarding. You know, when you have the confidence to go out of that box and use your creativity and ready to fall off the bike, that's where hope is. That's where hope for change is, for Mexico, for Canada, for the nonsense we see in the United States right now. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this. So part of the vision is where does hope live and how do I cultivate it? And it's not in the present box of what we call education. Sorry, it is in some places, but it's, again, not in the whole. And I sell that, and I think I can sell it well. So when someone lets a butterfly go that they've taken care of as a caterpillar and they've attached to it and they name it. And another example, an English teacher has a tear running down his cheek and he turns around and I say, why are you turning around? Right? It's all the male stereotype. And he says beautifully that I'm remembering my childhood. So I say, can you turn around to your class and repeat that? What a beautiful learning moment. It's a second language course. Get them talking. And he did. That's what I do.
Chris, también a mí me emociona mucho escucharte, ¿no? Me emociona pensar en cómo cuidar de otros, pues te ha hecho grande el corazón y te he invitado también a pensar en un montón de proyectos que has llevado a cabo y como esto que te decía tu mamá de puedes traer animales a la casa siempre y cuando los cuides, también un poco se trasladó a otras cosas de tu vida, ¿no? Como cuidar de las demás personas, cuidar de ti mismo y cuidar también de los proyectos que emprendes, con los que inicias, porque de eso se trata, pienso, cuando dices, hay que hacer, ¿no? O sea, es el ajedrez y lo difícil son los primeros movimientos, pero ya después puede ser más fácil. Y entonces también hay que cuidar esas cosas que nosotros empezamos a hacer para que florezcan. Y creo que eso es bien importante, porque también lo dijiste, de pronto no es que tengamos éxito a la primera, pero si no hacemos cosas, entonces nunca vamos a alcanzar el éxito, ¿no? Nunca vamos a generar proyectos que transformen. Pero bueno, todo esto, cuidar de otros, cuidar de nuestros proyectos, enfrentarnos a fracasos, a lo mejor que tú dices no son fracasos, sino son formas, ¿no? Distintas o formas en las que no llegamos a la meta. Como todo esto, pues puede ser, no sé, puede ser cansado a lo mejor de pronto. Entonces, quiero saber cómo hace Chris Adam para estar en encabezando el proyecto de sustentabilidad en Dawson, para tener esta empresa con la que haces las cosas que haces, acercando a otros a la naturaleza, para hacer todas esas cosas. ¿Cómo le haces?
Well, I think you probably just see by the way I think that I don't let myself be defined by cultural norms. So one of the things that helps me is I'm often criticized by friends and family. You know, you work too much. You should be doing things you like. And then they see my expression and they have to rephrase what they've just said. So, because my answer is, oh, well, I'm letting butterflies go in the peace garden. Oh, that's the peace garden we created 10 years ago with 1,000 volunteers. There's 20,000 flowers in the peace garden. It celebrates peace. It's a place where people go when they're stressed. We're inviting biodiversity back into an urban international city. We're fighting climate change. Wow. When I drive to work, I have to pick one of those things to be happy about, or I can think about all of them and just go, I can't wait to get to work. So what is work? So I'm very proud that I've molded all my jobs, and that the confidence I got as an entrepreneur, I made the job at Dawson. It didn't exist. I wrote my job description. That's fun. What do I want to do as a manager? So we have birds nesting on our gym roof. I get to feed ducks in downtown Montreal because of the work the students have done. They're lining up with their cell phones. I can let someone write a rap song in a class about climate change and give him a mark, a really good one, for creating a rap. His poetry and his music is teaching more about climate change than I can, standing up in front of a class. Right? And he actually sang that rap, yeah, at Tres Marias in Mexico. Oh, I mean, I could give you 100 stories like that. So I, my hobbies, what I love to do, and my work are not separated. And some people say that's a problem. You see, so what I celebrate is, it's not that I take work home. I look at it as, I take what makes me comfortable at home to work. Just another flip. So when I'm stressed, that's okay, because I'm doing what I love. And you have to have your challenging days. But I would be lying if I said there wasn't a price to pay for what I do, because I know I do a lot. Relationships, sometimes I'll sit and say, I'd like to have more time to be with friends. But to be quite honest, I see people all the time, all day. People want me to talk. So when I come home with my coffee and I do this for 2 hours with the frogs and the birds, oh my God, it's like, wow, I'm happy. So like meditation, being outside, being happy for the birds that are coming close to me and they feel secure here, seeing a flower blossom and the changes in that flower every day, sometimes every hour with the temperatures we have here, that's psychologically restorative to me. So we know that from literature, that's what nature does. It fragments stress, right? There's a new theory now, nature restoration theory. Finally, using MRIs of the brain, we know what a tree and water and butterflies do to our brain. I have to walk outside for 20 minutes, 10 minutes, and I'm back to where I am. And I'll just say, I don't know how I'm going to handle this challenge tomorrow that came up, but I know by the time I get to work, it'll be okay. And it usually is. Or there's someone who wants to help. They'll lift my spirit because I lifted theirs the week before. So there is a price to pay, but I don't call what I do a job either. I call it a calling. In English, we call it a calling. I'm meant to do this. So when I put my head on the pillow every night, if I'm not going to be there tomorrow, I know I've done what I was supposed to do. And hopefully, when I knock on wood, I'll be here for, a while longer. But what a special feeling to know that a butterfly is going to make it 3,500 kilometers to your country because of something a student did that I was part of. Some bird can make it through all the lights and the cities and the windows and the cats and the agricultural fields and the pesticides. So you'll hear the same bird singing in a tree where you live. You literally live, because I've heard them, that I hear in my backyard. They're huge. The knowledge that these animals have, what they're teaching us, they don't want much. They don't want these artificial borders. They just want a place to make a nest like we do. They just want a place where they can sit out a storm like we do. That gives me great pleasure to know that I'm part of that. So if I can amplify that, that's what I'm going to do. And if it means that I personally sacrifice a bit of time in terms of relationships, I'm absolutely okay with that. And I'm at peace with that. And I do have to be reminded, absolutely, But I really do believe that the earth is crying in silence out there, and we better start listening. So I'm listening, and I have a calling.
¿Sabes? Estoy como conmovida, te escuchaba y pienso, o sea, me reflexiono cuando te escucho, ¿no? En cómo todo lo que dices me hace sentido y al mismo tiempo me encuentro como poco involucrada y
Eso es una otra palabra.
involved
Ok.
y también em, como te escucho hablar del canto de los pájaros, de esta sensibilidad que tienes hacia el recorrido que hacen las mariposas monarca, y pienso en cómo son pequeñas, grandes cosas que de pronto hemos dejado de ver. Y pienso que este llamado que tú sientes es no sé, tú me podrás decir, pero que puede ser solo que que lo has asumido, ¿no? Porque pienso que es un llamado que finalmente todos tenemos o todos deberíamos tener, porque todos habitamos el mismo espacio. Entonces, otra vez te quiero agradecer y te quiero preguntar, Chris, este trabajo que tú estás haciendo, sería imposible hacerlo solo. Tú sabes bien, pues, que somos parte de redes, tú mismo construyes comunidad desde tus diferentes espacios, pero a veces este trabajo con otros, el trabajo colaborativo, no siempre es fácil porque implica relacionarte con otros que son distintos a ti. Entonces, ¿cómo haces para trabajar con otros y sí, superar estas diferencias? O cuéntanos, ¿cómo le haces?
It's going to be a similar answer to what I learned because I was not at school. When you have a small business, and in my case, educational institutions called you, I used to wait for the phone to ring. Now I don't want it to ring, but I still have those beautiful memories, that stress of, do I have enough money to put food on the table? But it was an exciting time. Oh, a school called me. Wow. And I learned very quickly because of that feedback. What interested people? Oh, I'm using the wrong vocabulary with those 6-year-olds. I need to pull at the heart of those students in the master's class I'm talking to 2 days later. So I learned a lot because I had to, and I could see it, right? Instant feedback. So when I first was asked to teach in a leadership program, I was recruited before I went back to school, I was really proud. And they threw me right into entrepreneurship and group dynamic classes. And I started to look at the theory and I go, oh, that's what I do. And I learned a lot, but it was more intuitive. Like you say, we have that capability. A good mother, a good father, a minister at the church, a leader of an after-school club, we have that. We don't have to be able to express it like you can as a psychologist. And good for you, because we need that if we want to build skills, right? We want to amplify this now. So we need to bring people together and we need to show them how to collaborate and do more than we've done. But ultimately, even that, if it's all about goal setting and what we have to do, and this is the way we're going to do it, it's not going to work. It's about interrelationship. So I get back to the soft skills. So one of the things I've learned, even in my specialty in sustainability, a huge part of my work is all interrelationships. People have to want to come to the meeting. Now, how do you include them if they're not an expert? Because the theory will tell you experts should be given more time. What if someone says, well, that's not fair, that's not equal? You have to be able to say, no, it's not equal, because you're an accountant and this is a biologist and this is a psychologist who I happen to maybe need to do something, or another day it's the biologist. So to be able to have the confidence to bring people together so that we can collaborate in an efficient way. And I think that's what we're missing. We know what it takes for people to collaborate, but getting them at the table and getting them to stay there. How many boring meetings have you been part of? Blah, 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 blah. We're going to meet again next week. And then 5 people don't come. After a month, your committee's in half. That's what I want to focus on. Okay, those butterflies have to get to Mexico, and the snow is going to be gone here in Montreal in 1 month. So that's going to dictate what this committee is going to do, because we're going to be ready in 1 month. And then everyone's, well, okay, how are we going to do that? I don't know. But let's look at all the skills at the table, and everyone's excited. And then we get all the skills, and we meet a week later. Now we've got 3 weeks. Can't let those butterflies down. So I use life, living things, to help us as living things get our act together, as we say. Enough with the committees and the research piling up, good research that's never used. So I get back to, I think what we need is people with good communication skills, educators with degrees, yes, but they have to be good communicators too, because there's too many boring people with great knowledge. Oh, and then we have to, as I say, I'm going to come back full circle. We have to repurpose education. We are not going to do what you're asking me that I'm trying to do with 300 or 400 people in an auditorium who don't even know who's sitting beside you. You don't know who's in back of you. And it's all about content-driven material. And then they kick you into society and say, collaborate. So you have the theory, right? So obviously we need to bring people together. We need to listen. We need to let them express themselves. We need to let them share. They should be accepted for who they are. That brings us into diversity and inclusion, right? So again, I could jump into the theory, but let's not polish the theory about inclusion and diversity. Let's just practice a little bit of it. And maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh, but people want to be together. People want to be nice, right? Like we say here, and I'm sure you have the same expression, put a cat or a dog or a small child into a really high tense board meeting and watch what happens. And people just calm down and they giggle a little bit and they laugh and they start problem solving because there's less stress. So to me, that brings me back to the whole nature part. If we can reconnect with nature, and in doing so, bring down stress, release imagination, creativity, access to memory when we're less stressed, and reconnect with the environment, that's gold. And if I can make money doing that, happy.
Sí, comprendo y bueno, te quiero decir que además esta está siendo una reunión que a mí me mantiene interesada y me mantiene feliz y me mantiene conectada contigo a pesar de la distancia. Y te lo agradezco un montón otra vez, estoy muy agradecida contigo, pero quiero preguntarte algo. Tú has estado en México, igual que las mariposas, has volado a México, ¿cierto?
No en este lugar, pero sí, como 2 horas de este lugar, dos y medio, sí. Sí.
Ok. Y en México, ¿has tomado tequila? ¿Te gusta?
Sí. Mucho.
Y
No es
otra
como
cosa,
el tequila aquí. El tequila aquí en Canadá es como, I don't know, agua con algo muy diferente.
¿pero aquí te gusta tomar tequila?
Sí.
¿Has tomado mezcal? ¿Qué te gusta más, el tequila o el mezcal?
Tequila. Sí.
Qué fácil.
Una respuesta rápida. Sí, estamos por terminar, pero hay unas preguntas que me hacen cosquillas y pues te las voy a hacer porque tenemos el chance ahorita. Primero quisiera que nos contaras cuál es tu animal favorito y una característica peculiar de ese animal. Una pregunta. La otra pregunta. Dices que toda la vida supiste que querías ser maestro. ¿Cómo lo supiste?
I'll start with the second one first.
Va.
It didn't take me long to figure out in school that what they taught about nature, not all teachers, but in general, I'm talking elementary now, so kindergarten to, let's say, or high school for sure, like basura. I couldn't believe it. So superficial, no feeling. Never talked about a beautiful 100-year-old tree where a grandfather or grandmother could sit with their grandchild. That's part of a tree. It was leaves. And, in grade 1, a tree has leaves. A tree has branches. A tree has a trunk. A tree has roots. Now draw it, boys and girls, and make sure it's the right color. So teachers just telling you, cutting nature apart into pieces, disciplines, right away. So every year, my heart that would beat so fast to get home to be with my spiders and my animals, that heartbeat disappeared by the time I was in high school, to the point where I didn't make it through college. I said, I can't do this. I can't do it. And throughout that process, I thought, people were always saying, what are you doing? What do you have in your room? They used to come into my room and I would explain things and I would gain confidence, that risk capital. People would come in. It was called a little museum. All guests, adults used to come into my room, all the kids. So I gained confidence and I realized I can teach my way because they were all interested. So I had to find a way outside the system to teach about nature because inside the system, it didn't work. And that simply led to a point where I can remember one board saying, we just spent several $100,000 on our nature, on our science book. We're going to hire you all year, my words. And I said, I'll make that nature material in your science book jump off the page for you so the kids really learn something. And then it started my career. So that's the second part. In terms of the animal, oh my God, there's a lot. I mean, I would have to say one favorite is the snapping turtle, just because of my relationship with those turtle, that experience that changed my life. They were part of my room for 3 months. I wanted to keep the first one that hatched, so I did. I kept that turtle for 8 or 10 years, and then I let it go, and I found it a year later. And I love the patience. They just sit. They don't bother anybody. They just wait for the world to come to them. There's something beautiful and graceful about a turtle in the water. These types of turtles only come out here in Canada when the female has to lay eggs. Otherwise, they're in the water all the time. And to me, they're just majestic. There's a lot I could learn from a turtle. Just that eye contact, and we stare at each other for half an hour, is just beautiful.
Chris, gracias por dejarnos ver a las tortugas con tus ojos. Ya hay otra pregunta que me está haciendo cosquillas. Cuéntanos, ¿cuál es tu música favorita? ¿Qué te gusta escuchar?
I haven't listened to a lot lately, so I go right back to the 60s folk songs, 70s folk songs. I love those. In fact, I was just listening yesterday and we looked at the lyrics. A lot of the music from the 60s and early 70s, obviously that was part of my youth. I made the mistake of saying, for example, rap would never last. But if I truly compare, I'm being very general, but if I compare some of the words to the songs that were all about taking care of the planet, right? In the late 60s, that was a big revolution. We didn't do it then. There was a smaller revolution in the 80s. We didn't do it then. And I've left a lot of music because of the lyrics. I just find the messaging is so superficial, celebrating the worst of human character. So I'm saying I have a bias, but I go to those wonderful words. Jody Mitchell here in Canada, paved paradise and put up a parking lot. I mean, that means a lot to me. Cut down all the trees and put them in a tree museum and charge people $1.50 to see them. Do we want to see nature in zoos? If we do, then we just have to keep on going. But what's interesting, Gabriela, you said how that we're innately connected to nature. More people go to zoos in the world than all other sports events combined. So what is it about nature We just have to flip it and say, you can have that in your backyard. Put ourselves in cages, like the new zoos are, we are in the cage and the animals are free. That teaches every child that comes something. And the future soon in our lifetime is virtual zoos, where you're going to be able to sit down on a gym floor with the entire elementary school, and a humpback whale is going to come out of the gym floor and you're going to hear it, and it'll be just there. I mean, we're already working on that. So you're going to see real animals, and you're going to want to touch them, but they're 3D. And that will, to me, that's going to be wonderful, because we'll leave the animals alone. And again, COVID has taught us animals are coming back to cities because we're not bothering them. Whales, it's been proven, whales are singing more. One scientist even said they seem happier because there's fewer boats making noise and competing with their communication. So, yeah, interesting things. We have so much to learn, and we've just got to we have to invite it back and just learn.
Gracias por esta invitación. Para nosotras es una invitación a seguir aprendiendo de gente como tú, que nos permite, a partir de sus historias y de su forma de ver la vida, encontrar otras formas también de reconocernos en el mundo. Te agradecemos un montón. Gracias por estar aquí. Se sintió muy cercano, a pesar de que lo estamos haciendo a través de esta aplicación. Gracias, Chris.
Gracias, muchas gracias.
Yo también te doy las gracias, Chris, pues porque en este ratito, en estos minutos, pudimos conocer al Chris de ahora, pero también nos remontamos al Chris de antes, y eso me pareció fascinante. Me gustó mucho conocerte de esa forma. Y nada, pues otra vez agradecerte que nos estés regalando tu tiempo, y ya, tú solo tengo gracias, palabras de agradecimiento para ti.
Gracias.
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 Te abrazamos.
Bye.
Bye.